Nope, it is not just you. At some point in adulthood, making friends quietly moved from something that just happens into something that we have to intentionally figure out. Except here's the thing, most of us were never taught the unwritten rules of adult friendship. This is Two Peas on a Pod, and today's solo office hours is your crash course in meeting and making friends as an adult. So, as always, settle in, get comfortable, or maybe today let's step outside for a good walk and talk because we are going to dive into even more stories, science, and secrets of friendship. I'm Dr. Miriam, and this is Two Peas on a Pod office hours. Hi, friends. It's time for another solo office hours episode of Two Peas on a Pod. And after your incredible feedback on our two-part series on friendship breakups, we are back to tackle the other big friendship experience that I get asked about most often. And truthfully, this is one of the big reasons why clients will often show up for friendship therapy, because they are wondering, as you might be too, how do we actually meet and make friends as adults? Here's something that we definitely don't talk enough about. And you know that I am all about having the conversations that we need to be having but tend to avoid. Friendship has seasons. It has seasons to it in so many ways. And if you listen to our two-part series on friendship breakups, you'll remember that research suggests that we lose and replace about half of our friend group every 7 years as adults. And what this means is this: learning how to make new friends, and yes, of course, cope with the endings of other friendships. These aren't niche skills, and these aren't things that we will need to draw on once or once in a while. These are lifelong skills and experiences, and they're inherent pieces of navigating what I call friendship fluidity, that our friendships really do have a life cycle to them. People move into our lives and people will move out of our lives. But here's the other thing. Friendship fluidity isn't just about losing and replacing friends. It's not just about navigating feelings of loneliness or being in a place where we're concerned that we don't have enough friends. This is also a story about abundance, because just as our specific friendships can come and go, the truth is our overall sense of connectedness can also ebb and flow. And there are moments in life when our friendships feel abundant and maybe a little bit more effortless and like they're sustaining themselves. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But there will also be moments where we find ourselves asking or noticing that we're ready for more, or we're ready for something different or something new, even. And that's perfectly okay. That's not always a reflection or a sign that you need new or better or different friends. Sometimes you just might want something specific. One of the things that we see is that this feeling, this desire, this yearning for new connection, yes, of course, it can happen because we've lost touch with an old friend, but it also shows up at some of the biggest transitions in our lives. So when we have moved cities, when we're in a place where we maybe want to travel more and we want to share that experience with someone new or a friend who we can likewise connect with over that shared sense of adventure and exploration. Maybe we're starting a new job, or we're going through job loss. We're, again, becoming a parent. We're going through a breakup or divorce. We've graduated. We're retiring. I mean, you've heard me list off these major life milestones and moments so many times in the past. But a big part of feeling socially fulfilled and a big part of being in a place where you realize you actually want to build new friendships, it's not just a reflection of the friendships that you may or may not have. Sometimes it's about realizing that you are in a place where you're ready for specific friendships. You're ready for newer friendships. You are ready for something different. And that is exactly what we are getting into today. And I promise you that we are going to make this episode as jam-packed and actionable as possible. And you'll hear me share some specific tips and little stories that you've never heard me share before. And so here's a quick look at what we are going to be covering in today's episode. First, I will talk about why absolutely this is not just you. Making friends as an adult, it feels harder because it is more challenging. We'll also talk about the 3 main reasons why making friends as an adult is just so difficult or confusing. We'll talk, as always, you know I love this, friendship myths and misconceptions, and most importantly, the practical strategies. These are behaviors, actions, plans, and mindset shifts that you can start using right away to meet new people, to feel more confident networking and socializing, and to start making new friendships. Maybe even right after you finish this episode. Stick around to the end because you will also hear where you can get things like conversation starters, prompts, next connection steps, and a free list of 100 places and spaces where people are actually meeting and making new friends. Because I don't want you leaving this episode or this time together in office hours thinking, oh, that was interesting. I want to leave you with, okay, here's specifically what I'm going to do next. Here's what I need to do, to try, to think, to say, to put on repeat. And speaking of, before we jump into everything good and actionable, I have a quick favor to ask of you. Just as you are looking to meet and make new friends, we are also looking to grow the friends of this show. So if someone comes to mind while listening to today's episode, here's what I ask. Please go ahead and share this episode with them. Not only might it help them invite more connection into their own life, maybe it'll deepen the connection that the two of you have together. A simple share might be the very thing that helps someone take their next connection step. And it is absolutely one of the most powerful ways that you can support this show. So thank you for helping us, and let's get into everything. Okay, now let's get into the meat of today's episode. I want to start off by talking about this very big and important question. Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to make new friends as adults? So let's talk about the three big reasons why. Again, this is not just you. Because the truth is, making friends in adulthood really is and can be so much more challenging and confusing than it was when we were kids. I mean, if you think back to when you were younger, we joke about this. And we've joked about this on episodes before. There's this feeling of, oh, I can just strike up a conversation with someone on the playground and that will just lead to an organic friendship. Or I'm just going to offer them a toy and that alone conveys everything they need to know about where they stand in my life. Or maybe it's just a declaration. We are now best friends. I mean, I know that some of us have had these conversations. And when we think back to what worked in childhood, it's often those simple gestures. The challenge is, though, that as adults, not only do we not know the unwritten rules, and we're going to get into that, our lives are actually no longer set up for friendship. They're not set up for friendship success. So think about this. When you were younger, friendship is built into the architecture of our lives, really like the social fabric of our experiences. So think about school and your classes and your teams and clubs and extracurriculars. Think about living in dorms or off campus in university. What happens is you are surrounded by a group of same age peers. Not only that, you see the same people over and over again, and you have shared experiences. So what happens is you have these built-in opportunities to not only meet people and to meet a number of people where you can then decide, okay, who's for me? Who do I actually click with? You also have built-in opportunities to talk, to converse, to collaborate, and to continue to connect on an ongoing basis. You don't even really have to think about where do I find people? Where do I find new people? Very often, the environment answers that question for you. It's the person sitting next to you in class. It's someone from your class. It's someone living in your dorm. It's your roommate. But adulthood changes that because absolutely, suddenly we have so much more on our plate. We have our work responsibilities, our family responsibilities, the need to caregive. We have less free time. We have more competing priorities. Again, somewhere in the midst of all that, we're asked to take care of our own well-being and needs. And the challenge is, amidst these growing stresses in some ways, or opportunities, or to-dos, or privileges, we also have a decrease in the opportunity to meet new people and to conveniently meet new people. And so suddenly that question of, well, where do I go to meet new people or make new friends becomes very, very relevant because outside of work, we don't always have a good answer for that. And this is partly why work is one of the main places where we meet and make new friends as adults. And if you want to hear more about that, you're absolutely going to want to check out our previous episode, previous office hours episode with Fahad Al-Hattab, all about workplace connection and friendship, because we talk about that. But frankly, some of us have those connections at work, or we know that that is not the place where we are going to make friends, or again, maybe we are just in a place where we are wanting more. Regardless of whether we are talking about making friends in or at or outside of work, this question of, well, where do I actually meet new people? And maybe where do I meet more than one person that I'm interested in connecting with? This becomes so very relevant. And this matters because the truth is that friendship is built through something that sounds kind of unglamorous. And that's the idea of repeated exposure, that usually friendships do not happen because of one magical conversation. They happen because we see someone again and again and again, and we slowly start to think, oh, I recognize them and then I know them. I know their name. I know their face. I like them. And this is an interesting piece, and we'll get into this a little bit more. But this is actually what we call the mere exposure effect, that the more often we see someone, the more often we're exposed to someone because we're seeing them, we're conversing with them, we're interacting with them, the more we actually start to like that person. And so you can see where this is headed, right? We need to be strategic about finding our intentional connection spaces. And I'm going to help guide you in finding yours in just a moment. Because not only do we want to think about, well, where can I meet new people? We want to be thinking about where can I meet people in an environment where I can benefit from the mere exposure effect. So, what do? We don't just want to find those people or find those spaces. We actually want to create those conditions. We need to stop waiting for friendship to magically happen and intentionally create opportunities for repeated connection. Okay, so for your very first practical takeaway, I want to talk about the where, because this is an important mindset shift. Very often, when we are looking to meet new people, to build new friendships, we want them to happen organically. So there is this almost magical thinking piece to it all, where we somehow assume that now that we've realized that we're in a place where we want more connection, that somehow these newfound friends should just show up and that should just unfold organically. But again, because the social structures aren't in place, we need to create our own conditions for connection. You have heard me say this and others before, that the best way to meet and make new friends is to step outside of your comfort zone and try something new, to pursue a hobby, an interest, a passion. And so, one of the things that I will say is that this is great advice. Yes, absolutely. People who have the most success at meeting and making new friends are those who are most willing to try something new, often in the form of a hobby or an activity, just like we did when we were younger. But here's what we get wrong. Very often, when we're looking to answer the question of what or where, okay, what is this new hobby that I'm suddenly taking on as an adult? Am I really going to do the whole pickleball thing, or am I connecting with friends over a sourdough baking class? Actually, let's talk about that. That's not a bad idea. Here's what I'll say though. Very often when we're thinking about those activities, we're trying to think about, well, where are other people? What are other people doing? What are the conversations that are being had? What do other people seem to like or enjoy? And the shift that I want you to make, and this is very important, it's not to look outward at what other people are doing or where you think you will have the best chances of social success because you know there are other people there. What I want you to do is to look inward, to look within, and to ask yourself questions like, well, where do I want to spend my time? Or what are the activities that I would like to pursue? What are the activities that I'm already doing that I would benefit from having them be a little bit more social? Where do I feel most comfortable? This is so important. And honestly, this is something I talk a lot about in my digital course, Confidently Connected, which is all about helping you build meaningful friendships, because there's a framework there that I walk people through when they're looking to try and answer that question of where do I go? What am I interested in? I mean, how often do we really take the time to think about that as adults? And so I'll go over this really quickly, but I definitely want you to check out that course if you are interested in getting into this a little bit deeper. Because the three things that I want you to pay attention to are this: when you are looking to choose an activity to create the conditions for connection, I want you to look for places and spaces that align with your values, your interests, and your strengths. And the reason for this is that this will help you find your connection points. I call this sometimes your connection kindling. So you don't need to become someone else in order to make friends. And in fact, we should get rid of that belief altogether. What you need to do is to find environments where you can be more of who you already are and can show up as your authentic self, and to use that really as a guide. Because, and this is important, so come back to me if you're not listening, because similarity is the root of friendship. And so when you can put yourself in a place, a space, an activity where you have a genuine interest in being there is a very good chance that you will find others who are likewise interested in that same hobby or experience, whether that's, fitness class or recreational sports, if it's a part of your religious or spiritual community, if it's an acting class or joining a choir or some type of a painting class, if it's a professional organization. It doesn't matter what it is, just so long as it is true for you, so that you can find that connection point and leverage that connection point. So you want to make sure that you're letting someone know, not only by virtue of you being there together, but pointing out the other things that you have in common as you get to know each other. Here are the other two reasons why you want to be very intentional about the activities that you choose. In addition to similarity and finding like minded people, pursuing a hobby or interest or activity also gives you another reason for being there. So when you step into a space, and I'm thinking personally, I mean, I've talked about this before. I started improv a year and a half ago, and that has been one of the best things that I have done. Absolutely, for meeting and making new friends. But it's so much more than that, because that was something that I really wanted to do for myself, to play a little bit more, to bring more fun into my life, to be creative, and also to support my speaking work, to be very clear. And so I had all these other reasons for stepping into that space and to reconnect with this part of myself that I had long let go of. And because of that, it took the pressure off. Had I showed up for improv day one and said, okay, I am here and I need to somehow make a new friend while also trying to engage my working memory in this way and try and be really present and come up with all these creative, clever ideas, I promise you, not only would I have failed at improv, which is still a work in progress, I absolutely would not have built new connections. And so what you want to do is to find the activity, find the experience, find the group that you have a genuine interest in, so that it takes the pressure off. Because in a strange, fun, roundabout way, when that pressure is off, you will have much more comfortability with being yourself and with approaching people and with inviting people in. The last thing I'll say is this, that when you are choosing activities, you want to make sure that this is not a one-time event. You want to make sure that this is, in fact, a club, a group, an association, an experience, a class that you can go to week after week or month after month, that it is not a single event, because friendship needs consistency. The number of times that I've had someone come into my office or that I've connected with who says, Dr. Miriam, I'm looking to make new friends, and I know that I'm really interested in painting and, again, being creative in that way. And so I went to a paint by numbers class or whatever it may be, and I didn't meet anyone. It didn't work. Well, of course it didn't work. That's not really how friendship is built. We need to be able to choose activities that are repeatable, where you can, again, converse and connect with the same people day after day or week after week or month after month, because it does take us and other people a little bit of time to work up the courage to strike up a conversation or to reveal a little personal detail that helps you find that other connection point, or to invite each other to another context, or to invite each other to hang out outside of that class. And so find something that you can return to, ideally with the same people. Let me just say one other thing here in terms of choosing activities. And again, if you're interested in this, make sure that you come check out the Confidently Connected community, because we talk a lot more about how to actually go about this process. The other mistake that I hear people make is that they go to an activity week after week, but they haven't made a friend. And when we get into that conversation a little bit more, it's because they didn't actually talk to anyone. And so you also want to make sure, as straightforward as this might be, that the activity you choose is inherently social. So instead of going for a walk on the mountain alone, join a walking group or a running group. Instead of bringing your watercolor set and painting in a park, take a class where you will actually connect with the teacher, with the other students. Go volunteer somewhere that you deeply care about, as opposed to just making a donation or attending a single fundraiser. If you're somebody who likes to co-work or to, get out of the home office and be around others, because there's a certain level of stimulation there that you find meaningful and rewarding, and it's potentially a good chance to meet new people and make new friends, try going to the same coffee shop regularly, and one where you can actually strike up conversations. So here's just one other note on that, by the way. You can also do a lot to make activities inherently social, or at least a little bit more social. So again, I hear people all the time saying, well, I went to a coffee shop and I brought my computer and nobody approached me. Well, with your head buried in your laptop and your headphones in, nobody in their right mind is going to step in and interrupt your important work or scrolling, little do they know. And so you want to make sure that you are open to trying new things, but also conveying a certain level of openness. I'll say this at an event recently, I was talking with a group of parents who were understandably concerned about how they could help their children to meet new people and to make new friends. And they were complaining with the utmost of empathy and curiosity about how they can support their children and their teens because. According to them, all their kids wanted to do was to stare at a screen or to play video games or to watch their favorite shows or movies. And look, screen time is a topic for another day. But what I will say is my advice was this. Well, that is a genuine interest. They are genuinely interested in those games, in those movies, in those shows, in those stories, and that's okay. But can we go with that genuine interest and leverage that? So can you, for example, get your child into, a movie club or a film club where they are reviewing movies alongside others, or maybe even they're writing scripts, right? It's a screenwriting club. There are ways that you can go with an interest and make it more social. And that is true for our children and our teens. And that is absolutely true for us as adults. If I had just watched improv online or even gone to a show here or there, gone to a comedy show, I absolutely would not have made the friends that I've made today, where we are actually collaborating and sometimes failing together and sometimes growing together and celebrating those wins alongside each other. And so I share all of this because if you, like me, feel like your time is limited and you want to use it wisely, then it really helps to be strategic and intentional with the kinds of activities that you are pursuing. So, again, you don't need to have endless amounts of time or to become someone else in order to make friends. You just need to find the environments and places and spaces where you can be who you are, where you can be more of who you are, and people will respond to that. On that note, again, if you're looking for guidance or advice about how to choose activities, then by all means, please, I would love to welcome you into Confidently Connected. But if you just want a little bit of initial inspiration of ideas where people are actually meeting and making new friends and the kinds of social experiences that people are having success with, I'm going to include it in the show notes. I have a free download of 100 places and spaces where people are making new friends. This is based on the research that we've done, based on our online community, and based on success stories from people in Confidently Connected. So check out the show notes and go ahead and download that because I think it will give you really good ideas and inspiration. Or maybe it's just that gentle nudge and encouragement for something that has already been on your list for so long. Okay, now I want to acknowledge something because it would be easy to stop here and say, great, just go out more. But if you've ever tried that and thought, yep, that's great advice, but why does this still feel so uncomfortable? Or why is this still not working? It may very well be because of the second reason. The second reason why making friends as an adult can be so difficult. Because the truth is, and I say this with the utmost of love and again, empathy and curiosity, it's that even when opportunities do exist, many of us, present company included, are carrying around beliefs that make connection much harder than it needs to be. Okay, so for reason number two, here is where I want to shift gears because, yes, to a large extent, the world has changed around us and we aren't gathering as much as we used to. And there are fewer places to gather and we are spending less time with our friends. And by the way, absolutely make sure that you check out the very first episode of Two Peas on a Pod where we get into all of this, the realities of adult friendship in today's modern world. But just as the world has changed, something else is changing too. And just as it's changing, we're kind of becoming more entrenched. We're becoming more entrenched in our beliefs. And as a clinical psychologist, I am fascinated by how our thoughts shape our emotions and our emotions in turn shape our behaviors. And friendship is no exception to this process. Here is what I mean by this. Most of us don't struggle to make friends because we don't want friendship. And sometimes it's not even because we're not in the best or right or true or aligned situations. It's because we're struggling since we've quietly adopted beliefs about ourselves, about others, about friendship that simply are not true. And those beliefs stop us from connecting before we even begin. So I want to walk you through a few of the main beliefs that are standing in the way of you meeting and making new friends. The first belief, and you may have heard me mention this before, is that friendships should just happen naturally. And this is probably one of my favorite myths to bust because somewhere along the way, we started believing that if a friendship is meant to be, that it should just happen. That, yeah, there shouldn't necessarily be awkwardness, but there also kind of shouldn't be effort. The conversation should just flow and we should sound like we are characters on a scripted TV show, that planning should be a breeze, and that vulnerability should just be entirely welcome and easy to navigate. So, underlying all of that is a little bit of this idea that if someone is meant to be a friend, it will happen organically and easily. But there is evidence from research, we know this now, that people who believe or subscribe to this belief that friendship should be effortless actually go on to experience greater levels of loneliness. And that's because our thoughts impact our feelings, of course, and our behaviors. And if we think that it should be effortless, what happens is we withdraw at the first sign of discomfort. We take it as a sign that there's something wrong, again, with us or with that person or the potential friendship that's budding. Or we never even try in the first place. And so friendship isn't effortless. And sure, sometimes do we experience that friendship chemistry that might spark an initial conversation? Yeah, that's incredibly special. But it doesn't actually work to sustain friendship long term. Friendship isn't something that we find at one point in time. It's something that we build over time. And that building requires us to show up again and again and to put in the effort, even though it doesn't always feel easy, even though it doesn't always feel like exactly what we want to do. And we know that this is true for other aspects of our well being, right? I mean, it's not the case that we always wake up and want to go to the gym, but if we are dedicated to working on our cardiovascular fitness or our flexibility, we know that sometimes we have to be able to put in the effort and we have to be able to withstand some moments of discomfort as well. And the same is true for friendship. We need to be able to tolerate that discomfort, to put in the work, and frankly, to push through in those early interactions with people where we don't necessarily feel that spark of connection. We need to be able to stay curious and to stay in touch with our desire for connection long enough that we can really gauge whether there may, in fact, be friend potential here. The next belief that we need to reframe is that everyone already has their established circles of friends, that they have their people, that they don't need another friend, that they're too busy. And sometimes it's because we feel that way, that maybe we are feeling busy or overwhelmed. But very often, and I'll say this is one of those beliefs that can make us sound a little bit more self-aware than we really are. Because what often happens is instead of acknowledging our inner discomfort, fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, difficulty with uncertainty, what happens is that we focus on other people's experiences. And so we just say to ourselves, well, they don't need another friend. They're not interested. They already have their established people. And that kind of lets us off the hook in terms of having to make the effort in the first place. Or we reach out, we experience an initial disconnect, or maybe even a felt rejection. And we interpret that as a sign that those people inherently aren't interested, or maybe we even broaden that out. We overgeneralize and we just assume that everyone is not interested, that everyone has their circle of friends. And if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, or if you've been a part of the conversations that we've been having online, in workshops, at recent events, you know that this is simply not true. This is not what the research says. This is not what clinical work shows. This is not what our conversations demonstrate. The truth is, people are craving connection. People are hungry for connection. So Google searches of how do I make friends? That has increased. People are signing up for courses like Confidently Connected. They're listening to this podcast. They are there hoping, praying that someone else reaches out. And so you might be assuming that someone doesn't want new friendship, but there's a very good chance that other people are assuming exactly the same thing as you. And I'm not here to suggest that you, again, have to be friends with everyone or that you can be or that everyone has friend potential. Again, there's a big difference between acquaintanceships or friendliness and friendedness, right? You won't be for everyone and not everyone out there will be for you, and that's okay. But there are people out there who aren't looking for everyone. What they're looking for is you. And so I want you to do away with that idea that there is this scarcity experience to it where you and you alone are looking for new friends, or that it's so challenging to try and find the people who are open to new connection. because there's a lot more widespread desire for more connection or deeper connection than you might think. Okay, the third belief that I want us to reframe when it comes to making friends is this, that if it feels awkward, it means I am doing something wrong. And here's what I want to normalize. And I don't know how motivating this is going to sound. So you'll let me know. Making friends feels awkward because it is awkward. It's not because you are socially awkward, it's because it's new. The first conversation with anyone can feel awkward. Walking into a room alone can feel awkward. Introducing yourself can feel awkward. What kind of a handshake are you going to give? How are you greeting someone? Have you remembered their name? These are all, yes, anxious thoughts, but when these are more transient, this is also just a normal part of connecting. And when emotions are high because we're invested in something, yeah, it's normal that this feels uncomfortable. This doesn't mean that you're failing. It means that you are engaging with someone or something new, and it means that you care. It means that you care, and that is a good thing. And part of the awkwardness, yes, of course, like I said, sometimes this can come from the fact that we feel a little bit anxious because it is awkward inherently because we care. But it can also happen, or I should say, it can especially happen when we feel rusty, when it feels like we are engaging with skills or with parts of ourselves that we haven't engaged with in a very long time. And for a lot of us, when we look to make new friends as adults, this might be the first time that we have tried to build new connections in a very, very long time. And part of what's really interesting is that avoidance fuels social atrophy. Avoidance fuels social atrophy. Here's what I mean by this. When it has been a while since we have engaged with someone, or tried to make a new friend, or networked with intention, or initiated, whatever that social experience or social skill may be. When it's been a long time, it feels more effortful. And this is really important because if you think back to the early days of reintegrating into society post pandemic, one of the things that was really clear is that for a lot of us, we felt rusty. Or we didn't necessarily notice it on the front end that this felt harder, but what we did notice was that afterwards we felt a little bit more drained. We felt a little bit more tired. That felt more effortful in hindsight. And this is really important because, again, there's this whole idea that the challenge of it all, the awkwardness of it all, the discomfort of it all is in a lot of ways related to the experience of practice. It's use it or lose it. And I don't want to imply that, if it's been a while or that you haven't done this, that you've inherently lost your social or friendship mojo. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. But I am saying that it makes sense that this feels awkward, that this feels a little bit extra difficult or challenging. I think back to various points in my life when I felt like I had to reintegrate into society or reintegrate into a particular friend group or friendship experience. I'm thinking specifically of moments when I had been spending a lot of time at the hospital with family members. And because of the way that healing unfolded, I didn't spend as much time connecting with other people outside of that context. And I remember kind of walking around when time had freed up a little bit and people were doing better, feeling really overwhelmed by just how loud the outside world was, or just feeling a little bit less comfortable in myself, in my body, of approaching people, of striking up conversations, of trying to move connections forward. I definitely felt this postpartum. And I know a lot of you listening can relate that there are points in your life that you can point to or pinpoint and say, yeah, that felt a little bit more challenging then. And so if it is feeling awkward or uncomfortable for you right now, regardless of whether you can pinpoint exactly why or when the last time was that you used these types of friendship skills, I want you to remember that that is completely normal. And that has nothing to do with your ability to go on to build new friendships. What do we do with these beliefs? First, I want you to make some swaps. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is replace "it should be easy" with "it is okay if this takes time." Friendship grows through consistency, not necessarily through speed. And in fact, you want this to take a little bit of time. You want this to be an intentional practice because just as you are trying to build a connection, you're also trying to gauge how the other person is responding. And so sometimes when a friendship is really quick to get off the ground, it's also equally quick to fizzle and fade. Second, I'm giving you a lot of harsh wake up calls today. I hope this feels okay. The second thing is I want you to get over yourself. I want you to stop asking, do they like me? Do they want to be friends with me? And instead, I would like you to ask yourself, well, do I enjoy their company? Do I enjoy being around them? Am I inherently interested in building a friendship here? Or am I looking for a signal that I am good, that I'm worthy of friendship? Because that tiny shift can change everything. I also want you to remember something called the liking gap. And this is a psychological phenomenon that researchers Boothby and others, including Jillian Sandstrom, who will be on our podcast soon, this is something that they have found in their research. And the liking gap tells us this, that we and others consistently underestimate how much other people like us, how much they enjoy us, how much they want to get to know us, how much they enjoy conversations with us. And what this means is that your brain is probably a less reliable narrator than you think. So when you're looking to approach a group of people or wondering about, does this person want to be my friend? The two things that I'll say is, on the one hand, maybe not. And yeah, it's hard to tolerate that, but it also is just one step closer to the people who will want to be in your life. And two, they probably like you more than you think. So let's try not to let one anxious thought convince us to not reach out or to not stay open. And then finally, the best way to do that is not only by giving ourselves these helpful reminders, it's by directly challenging our confirmation bias. And so when we have beliefs in our mind, like no new friends, people don't want to get to know me, they don't like me, or I'm not good at this, what happens is we are much more likely to pay attention to the evidence that supports those beliefs because who doesn't like being right? And we like our worlds to be predictable and we like our internal narratives to be predictable, even though they hurt. And so what we have to do is we have to be very intentional about searching for contradictory evidence, to start collecting it, to write down the moments where people responded to you really positively, to write down the situations where somebody extended an invite or accepted yours, to write down even situations where other people are making new friends, if that helps you to challenge the belief that making friends as an adult just isn't possible. Sometimes the best way to change our beliefs isn't through the cognitive reframing, it's actually through action. Okay, and to round this out, here's what I want to say, that even again, when we understand all of that and we have a sense of the importance of putting ourselves out there and trying a new activity and changing our mindset to be one that is much more supportive and encouraging, there's still one more big obstacle that we need to tackle. And honestly, it's one of the biggest ones. The hardest part of making friends as adults isn't always meeting people or our internal narratives. It's what actually happens and what we do after we have met someone. Because what is very clear to me is that we underestimate the power of the follow through. We get comfortable being almost like passenger princes or princesses in our own friendships instead of stepping into the driver's seat. And if we want to build new connections, we need to be much more engaged connectors, not just responsive collaborators. So we need to get more comfortable with friction and to accept that friendship actually comes from friction and from inconvenience. Because when it comes to friendship or honestly every other area of our life, I really believe that we have been accustomed to far more convenience than is helpful, right? We can order food or medicine, uh, whatever it is, instantly. We can stream anything we want right away. We don't have to wait to Saturday morning to watch our favorite cartoon. We can text someone without needing to call, right? We can find anything with the click of a button. We can find the answer. We don't have to sit in curiosity and the moment of uncertainty or tension. And without realizing it, what happens is we really bring that same expectation to friendship. So again, we think if we really clicked, it should just happen, or it should have happened by now, or we think if this person wanted to be friends, they would make the effort. We are waiting for someone else or something or some app or button to swoop in and save us, to solve our problems, to make it easier for us, instead of recognizing that not only do we have to tolerate the friction and be a little bit more patient, we have to be actively engaged in the follow through. And so, again, this is a bit of a crash course, right? We're going through this quickly. If you want more guidance, you know where to find it. And if you don't, send me a message and I will send you some resources on the topic. But here are the three big types of initiation and follow through that I have found to be the most helpful and powerful when it comes to building new connection. The first is the approach behavior, where when you are in a social situation, when you're attending that class that you have worked up the courage to attend, when you are interacting with somebody that you think could be a potential friend, you want to make sure that you are approaching them with interest, with curiosity, and to make that really salient and clear. Engage in approach behaviors by walking up to someone and striking up a conversation. Be the initiator in that way. Initiate an approach by being more curious, by asking questions about the other person. Allison Wood Brooks, who is a faculty member and associate professor at Harvard Business School, and she's the author of Talk, has such great advice about asking better questions and the importance of being curious. Ask better questions, ask one more question. Sometimes the follow through is as simple as staying in the conversation 2 minutes longer and not ducking out or finding an excuse or looking around for someone else to talk to the minute there is a potential moment of silence or what feels like an awkward pause, or you're left not sure what to say next. That again, we overestimate how uncomfortable that is, and we underestimate the impact of staying in a conversation just a little bit longer. The next way that we can follow through is if you feel something, say something. And so, we are all brought up with that rule of if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. And we are not talking enough about how important it is to say the nice thing. And so, if you are talking with someone, tell them. Don't assume that they know. Again, because of the liking gap, and don't assume that it doesn't feel absolutely fantastic to be on the receiving end of that type of a disclosure. It again can be as simple as, I really enjoyed talking with you, or I'm so glad we met. I love that we get to be partners today. I'd really like to continue this conversation. A simple, that was really fun, or I haven't laughed like this in ages. This can go such a long way to communicating to someone that we like them and kind of bridging that liking gap. And also, it turns out that we like people who we think like us. And so the more you can share and be generous with this type of, sure, compliment, but also just positive feedback, the clearer it becomes to someone else that you're interested in befriending them, and the more open they will be to befriending you. We can all be connection leaders in this way, and we can all work to meet our own connection goals by being just a little bit braver. People are often waiting for a signal that their interest is welcome. And so one of the biggest things that you can do is to not wait. And speaking of not waiting, the last way that I want to encourage you to initiate is the following: to follow up when the connection still feels warm, to find your bridge, not only to another person, but to your next interaction, to your next conversation. So we don't want to play games in the world of dating, and we absolutely don't need to play games in the world of friendship. And so you can do away with this idea that there's a perfect time to message someone. What we don't want to do is to let life get in the way and to not follow up on an exchange. And so we don't want to wait weeks if possible, right? We want to send a quick message to let someone know, again, I really enjoyed chatting with you, or teaming up, or had so much fun in class yesterday. And here's the specific piece of it all: I would love to. I'd love to grab a coffee sometime. I'd love to grab lunch. Are you going to class next week? Can we walk together? I'd love to get together and practice our scenes outside of class. Whatever it is, strike while the connection is warm. The goal isn't to create a lifelong friendship immediately. The goal is really quite simply to create another opportunity to find your next interaction and to keep finding the various connection steps that will allow you to stay connected. And here's one thing I'll just add. one of the number one wishes that I hear people express when it comes to friendship, and especially when it comes to building and maintaining friendship, is the desire that someone else would initiate first. And for all sorts of reasons, I understand why. I mean, when it comes to, like, have you ever tried to get a group together, first of all, right? The amount of actual work that goes into coming up with plans and making sure everyone has the right information and shows up on time and actually attends and has a good time, it's a lot. But it's also more than that because when you are in the initiator role, you are not only tasked with the practical side of that labor, you're also holding the emotional weight of that relationship, right? You're holding the vulnerability, you're holding the uncertainty of how will this person respond and do they like me and is this the right suggestion of a next activity or experience? Is this the right time? And so it does feel both taxing and vulnerable, or at least it can be. And so I get why this is a big wish that people have. But the other thing I'll say is that it's also a huge opportunity because if we know that people are not only hungry for connection, but hungry for someone else to make the first move, then think about the opportunity that is hidden, right? Or left on the table about being the person who does go first, who does initiate. Maybe that someone is you. So, if there's one thing that I hope you take away from today's conversation, it's this. It's that making friends as an adult, it is not hard because you're bad at friendship. It's difficult because adulthood, in a lot of ways, changes the conditions for connection. But you can always create new opportunities. You can try something new. You can challenge old beliefs, and you can choose to be, frankly, courageous, one small connection step at a time. That said, before we go, here is your friendly reminder. Making a new friend isn't entirely up to you. The truth is that friendship is co created. It takes two people who are both showing up with openness, with curiosity, and with a willingness to invest in that connection. And so this week, as you step into the week, as you have this episode in mind, as you maybe have your connection step in mind, I want to invite you to redefine what social success actually looks like. So instead of asking yourself, did I make a new friend? Or, did that specific strategy or change work? I want you to ask yourself, well, did you step outside of your usual bubble or try something new? Did you actually download a list of ideas of where to meet people and figure out one that you're really interested in pursuing? Did you practice striking up a conversation? Did you do the follow through, right? Again, did you try something new? And I'll just say this as you're thinking about trying new things, again, know that that is going to be uncomfortable. And what we're really aiming for there is if you think about a scale of 1 to 10, you want your connection step to fall somewhere in the 4 to 6 range, not more. More than that, it's going to be too uncomfortable that either you're never going to take action or you'll try something new and think to yourself, oh, thank goodness that's over right afterward. You want to aim for the type of discomfort that is going to encourage growth, not avoidance or retreat, and not kind of this false sense of bravery or courage. You want to feel really good about the new things that you are trying out and to find things that are absolutely within your control. And all of those things of stepping outside of your bubble, of striking up a conversation, of trying something new, those are all things that are possible. And over time, they're the things that make friendship possible. So I don't want you to judge your success by whether you made a new friend today or this week or this month. I want you to judge it by whether you gave friendship a chance. And so that is your next connection step, to give a new friendship a chance. This week, do one thing that creates the possibility or that creates the conditions for connection. And maybe that is, again, introducing yourself to someone new. Maybe it's sending a text to a could be friend. I'm saying this right now. I'm putting this on my own to-do list, my own list of connection intentions. It's to reach out to one person that I have in my surroundings that I'd like to be better friends with and to kind of let them know that I'd love to get together. I'd love to go for a walk. Maybe it's saying yes to an invitation to do something new instead of staying home. Maybe it is signing up for that class, volunteering, showing up to a community event, joining an ERG at work where you actually will have the chance to socialize with others. Or maybe it is simply letting someone know that you'd love to get together again. Remember, your job is not to make a friendship happen overnight. Your job is to create opportunities for friendship to grow. And that, my friends, is our time together in office hours. I am so glad that we got to spend this time together. And I hope that this episode reminds you that meaningful friendship isn't about luck. It's about intention, practice, and a willingness to take that next small connection step, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Before you go, I'd actually love to hear from you. How did you enjoy this shorter solo episode compared to our normal full hours or hours plus together? I'd also love to hear, is there a friendship topic that you'd love for us to tackle together? So here's what I want you to do. Come find me over on Instagram or LinkedIn at Miriam Kermeyer and at the 2 Peas on a Pod and let me know. And if today's episode was helpful, again, the best way to support the show is to share it with someone. Share it with someone who can use it. Maybe it's a friend who's building or rebuilding their social circle, or maybe it's that person who could be your could-be friend. You never know where one simple share might lead. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow the show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave us a rating or review. It really does help more people find this show and have these conversations that we all really need. Until our next catch up, take care of yourself and the people in your pod, and I will see you back here next week. 2 Peas on a Pod is hosted by Dr. Miriam Kermeyer. Executive produced by Zoe Travis, Matthew Hoffman, Katya Kaminsky, and Dr. Miriam Kermeyer. Produced and edited by Podcast Nation. Producers, Madison Britt and Alicia Paneer. Audio engineer, Miles Carter. Original music by Sarah Walk. Created by Zoe Travis and Matthew Hoffman. 2 Peas on a Pod is recorded in Montreal and Los Angeles. Today's program contains information that is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This program is not a substitute for psychological or medical advice. Please seek out your own support and research as needed. Take care, friends.